there are some really awesome band directors that nobody knows of because they're in their own little neck of the woods and they're burning the house down and doing a great job.
If your program is strong, if you're doing the best you can, that's success. If you have kids loving music, that's success. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We'll just start here. So our guest today is Mike Depasquale. He is from Elkton, Kentucky, and teaching at Todd County Central. And Mike, let me, how long have you been? Well, I'll let you tell your story. He's a Western Kentucky guy. So, yeah, just tell where you're from and all that stuff, Mike.
Well, I'm originally from Hopkins County, Kentucky, which is, just about 45 minutes away from here, from where I live now. And I just finished my 21st year in the band room, and most of my time teaching has been spent in, kind of rural areas, and although not entirely, and has been spent, in a variety of sizes of schools, and I've got kind of a diverse background.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How long have you been at Todd County?
6 years. Just finished my 6th year here.
6 year. Okay.
Yeah.
Now Heather, your wife, is she the middle school at Todd County?
She is the middle school director in the district.
Do you guys get to team teach?
We do not.
Oh,
Not
man,
currently.
Okay.
It's just a matter of not too many students and not enough teachers in the buildings themselves.
Right.
And so we have to pick up a little, and this is pretty common in small schools. You got to pick up a little extra slack because while it's small, it doesn't mean there's less to do necessarily. And so, you've got to so I teach on top of band. I also teach guitar. I've got a couple of sections of humanities. We've opened up kind of a project-based learning music theory class for next year also. So we've got, we've got some things going on.
Okay. Very cool. Tony, do you have any questions before we get to our questions?
I don't think so. I don't know Mike, so I'm curious to learn about all the things. So
and I know, Mike, you don't know Tony. I introduced you to Tony, but Tony is we've known each other for many, many years. He is currently the band director at Avery Trace Middle School in Cookeville, Tennessee. He's a Tennessee Tech alum, as I am, so we've got that together. And fellow sax player, which Mike is a sax player as well. So he's Avery Trace feeds Cookeville High School.
Okay.
So we've known each other for a little while. So so there we go. So Mike, what we're going to do, we're going to go into our questions, and then there are a few things after our questions that we want to discuss with you, and the reason we asked you onto the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, first question: what was the piece of music that made you fall in love with the band?
I'm going to take the easy out, and I really don't know. I was lucky to go to middle school program, high school program that selected good music that was engaging and at a high level. In high school, I got to play, both of the whole suites. I got to play, variations on a Korean folk song. We got to play Irish tune from County Dairy, along with a lot of other stuff. We sight read way more than we programmed.
Right.
And so it was just, I think it was just kind of all of it. I'm really eclectic in my musical taste. I'm not a genre snob or anything like that. And it's whatever, if it's good music, it's good music. And so I think it was just kind of all of it together was really what drove me to it. I can't, if you ask me who my favorite anything is, I literally can't tell you. I don't have an opinion like that. I feel like once you get to a certain level, better or favorite or whatever doesn't even matter anymore. It's also high level that it's wonderful.
Okay. Very cool. All right. So, have you ever started a band from scratch, rebuilt a program, or inherited an established program? And if you've done more than one of these, which one was the hardest and which one was most fun?
Most of pretty much all of my career has been rebuilding programs. To varying levels. I've had a couple that were pretty much rock bottom when I inherited them. I worked in a, uh, I worked at Greenwood High School in Bowling Green, Kentucky, a large school. We were about 1,800, 1,900 students at the time. And that was not a rebuild. That was more of a kind of defining a new track. And I was an assistant director there and worked with two really, some really great people there. And we were kind of, I think, redefining kind of a new direction. But for the most part, it's been going in places that were in pretty rough shape. My first job, I think it was the second or third day class, and one of the kids was like, "Are we going to play our instruments every day? Because we're not used to doing that." Yeah, yes, you're going to play your instrument every day. We're going to play every day.
Oh,
Babes.
Right. And so it was like, okay, that was like my first ever gig that I got asked that question. Now, was that to be truthful? I don't know, but possibly. So it's a hard road, especially when you take over a place that's been been down, if it's, or some that have been down for a long time, and you have to kind of evolve it. The fact that there's volumes of books that written about how to change things without making everyone angry tells you how hard that is. And so you kind of have to evolve it slowly and mold it, and you have to take the long road, and you hope that you have an administration that's patient enough with you to take the long road and be gradual with things. Because if you do too much too soon, it's going to blow up in your face. Or if your expectations are way high, but it's not ready for that, you're going to have problems. It's too, you gotta just kind of step things up gradually over time and figure out how every place is a little different. Everybody works a little differently, and you got to figure out how just to maneuver it. What do your people want, and that's what you have to work with.
Yeah, exactly. Every situation is different.
Mm-hmm.
Culture shift it takes time.
Yep.
It's hard. It's not going to be your program, and we've Tony and I have talked about this. Not going to ever be your program until about year 3 or 4.
Right.
Before then, it's the previous, or it's trash until you build your culture.
Right. And we're at the point now, this will be our 7th year here, where every student was who's in the program had started with my wife as their band director, and is now here. And of course we were so it is, we've definitely in the last couple of years seen a big shift in how things operate and the way kids see things and the way they function. You'll see it in year 3 or 4 usually, like you mentioned, but then after you've been there 5, 6, 7 years, you start to really see a shift.
Oh yeah, definitely. By then, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, the culture has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, cool. All right, what does self-care look like for you when you're not directing or when you're not wearing the band director hat? What do you do to take care of yourself?
Well, really, I was really bad at this for about 10 years. And so I kind of had to set some guidelines for myself where I knew I was going to be done very early, and I wouldn't be back. So, I make sure that I kind of, home is home and work is work. And there's some work I don't mind doing at home. I don't mind doing score study at home. I don't mind, sometimes listening to literature at home that I may teach, something like that. I'm fine with that. But when I leave school, I don't really look at my email anymore. I have my Outlook app on my phone that's got my school email that I don't get any notifications from, and I just use that if on the fly if I need to. No students or parents have my cell phone number. That's like one of my number one rules. None of them are on any of my social media. So they cannot. So basically, my communication is when I'm at work, I can be communicated with. Now we do use Remind. We use Remind app, which they can message me through if they need to. Although I try to reserve that for, if you need to get a hold of me and we're mobile or or it's an emergency or something like that, that's perfectly fine. If someone sends me a message at 8 o'clock at night, which they don't really do that, but if they do that, I'm probably not going to respond to it till the next morning unless it's just something that needs to be handled.
Right.
It's if it's an emergency or something like that, which is of course extremely rare.
But and that's also part of the culture shift. They know, hey, look, work's work, home's home. Don't bother me at home unless, like you said, it's an emergency. So
right.
yeah,
And we make sure that we, and something, sorry to kind of dovetail on that is, being the way you make sure that doesn't happen so much is you're clear in your communications. Because what's the most common questions that we get in the middle of the night or, super early in the morning? What time do we have to be there? When are we getting back? If you communicate all that and everyone knows the manner in which that's going to be communicated and they have it. So like if we have, a band competition or something on a Saturday, on that Monday, there's an itinerary that's out
right
on Monday. And then that goes out. And if I don't have it ready, they'll bug me about it. Like the rare times that I don't have it ready till Tuesday, they're like, where's the itinerary? It goes out in the email to the parents. It's a hard copies handed to all the students. And our parents know that the main way we're going to communicate is via email, because there's one of me and 40 some families. I can't take 40 some family questions and stay sane. So that's really, it's kind of a roundabout answer. The way I keep my home life separate from my school life. I still stay active musically. I gig and things like that. And that, gives me a musical outlet that's not my school.
Okay. Any non-musical hobbies?
Not especially, not in particular.
Okay.
Just being husband and dad and things like that.
Okay. That's enough.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. Because your daughter's Harper's how old?
She's 6.
6. Oh my gosh. My granddaughter's 6.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, she's a handful.
Yeah.
She is. So yeah. Let's see. If you were not a band director, what would you be doing?
Oh gosh. Well, I almost got my degree in history, so I don't know what you'd do with that. I guess teach history.
Football coach.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's a system that sometimes works, but not always. I think we see plenty of evidence of that. But also, I really don't know. I went in as a music education student and stayed that all the way through. My family really wanted me to be an attorney, but that didn't sound very interesting to me at 18. And so, although I probably have a lot more money,
maybe just a little,
maybe a little bit more, but but that's fine. I love what I do. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody dreams of playing their instrument for a living at multiple stages in their lives, which, it's only a lucky few that get to do that, I guess. But
yeah. All right. So your undergrad was Murray State, right? Mm-hmm. Go Racers. What do you wish that your undergrad had prepared you better for? And what do you think that your undergrad prepared you for that you never thought you would use?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I was really lucky and my undergraduate preparations were terrific. we had some really level-headed professors and working with us. Of course, working with the instrumental music education students at Murray State for many, many years was a guy named John Fannin, and he was had been a band director, high school, middle school band director who taught in some wildly diverse situations, and he brought a lot of very practical, pragmatic method. Everything was for a reason. We weren't just learning it to learn it. It was there to prep us for the next step. And so, in undergraduate, I was really lucky in preparation. Now, I also learned pretty quickly that your undergraduate education gets you through about a year and a half. and then and then you're having to learn, you're hopefully picking up lots of new knowledge and lots of new skills. And what can you prepare for everything? No, you definitely cannot. And so I felt like my education was really well rounded and very practical and pragmatic in what I could do, in what I knew, but also in some areas it was very, it was really high level. We were really lucky to have the theory people we had, the ensemble people we had, the applied instructors that we had were very knew that their mission was to get educators ready for the next level, and
not
so
just musicians but educators.
Right, yeah. We're and now again, we had we still had very high we had very high musical expectations there. Now I mean, they still do. It's one of the requirements for any bachelor's degree at Murray State University is you have to present a senior recital, and I know that's not at every university, doesn't require that. But that's a graduation requirement for us.
It was at us for us.
And I know there's some places that don't require that, especially if they're really large. But that was of course that's a huge undertaking, and you're working way ahead of that to be ready.
Right.
So those things were terrific. But I also am somebody that thinks that you get out of it what you put into it. There's tons of great people that have come from every high school and every university everywhere, and it's because they took advantage of the opportunities they had.
Okay, very cool. Tony, I'll let you ask the next questions.
All right. Sorry, my dog has decided to start chiming in, so I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but let's see. What does your program look like on a normal day? Like, what's your daily schedule look like?
Okay, so my daily schedule, of course, like I said, we are self-contained. So I'll get through a couple classes of humanities, and I try to get those. I like those scheduled first thing in the day because I just want to get them over with. And I try to get those first thing in the morning, so then I can kind of compartmentalize. And then we'll have theory, guitar, and then band is at the end of the day. We do have required marching band here. And we do grant exemptions if they are in some certain school activities like football, soccer, things like that, that they can take band. Although if they do that, and we don't have anybody currently who does that. But if they were to do that, they do have kind of alternative assignments to make up for some of the time, and to make sure that they're staying as engaged as everyone else is. But we do have that. Our marching band schedule is for a competitive group is fairly light. Everyone's has 2 long rehearsals a week after school till like 5:45. We get out at 2:50, and then everyone has a shorter rehearsal that's an hour and a half long, and then everyone has an open day. They have an open afternoon where they don't have to be after school at all, so they can keep their job. They can finish homework, or they can get help for district auditions, whatever it is that we've got going on. And if we don't have a football game on a Friday, we have a night off. We make sure we schedule a Saturday or 2 during the course of the season that's just off. We don't do anything. Just that way our people have time to self-care and schedule their family things. And our folks are at this point pretty good about scheduling around things. They're like, okay, we can't travel that weekend. We can't do that weekend, but there's an open weekend. Let's do it there. And they do that. And the key, of course, is communication and making sure that, we get a schedule out and like March, as to as to what's going to go on.
Okay. Yeah. See, Tony coming from Tennessee, and Mike, I don't know if you realize this or not. You say have a Friday, a free Friday night. Up here in Kentucky, we get those because we don't travel.
I was about to ask what a free Friday night was.
Well,
Tennessee.
I sympathize with that because my first 2 years were actually in Tennessee,
Oh, okay.
in far west Tennessee, and we had great football teams, and I think we went 13 consecutive Friday nights both years I was there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you got to load that bus up and load that truck up right after school, and you're leaving with the team. And I remember those days.
The Friday after Thanksgiving is always the toughest one because nobody's in town.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We didn't have that. I enjoy the Friday nights off. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My very first gig was in Tennessee. I had no idea Tennessee traveled. So I was an assistant, and they we were talking about ball games and all that, and talked about going to the ball game Friday night, and I was like, it's away, right? We don't play. It's not a home game. We go, yeah, we travel, yeah. What? So I was like, oh, okay. Well, here we go.
Yeah.
But we kind of make up for it when it gets to be basketball
Basketball.
tournament time.
Yeah.
Up here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to load up and head over to wherever school for the tournament game. And if you if you hit it just right, you may have 4 games in a week, and it's not at your school. Those are weeknights, and the school you're playing, you have the host school's an hour away, and then you have the late tip off that doesn't start till like 8:00. So that could be.
And you go over there for one basketball game and then come back.
Yeah, you definitely cheer for double headers on tournament time. It's one night that's fully taken up, not 4 nights. And if you get 2 teams that end up in the region or whatever, you're pep banding a lot.
Uh-huh.
And it's a school night.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. You kind of already got into this. Do you teach anything outside of band? And this can go back to previous positions or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I love teaching music theory. I'm a huge theory nerd, and I always have been. And I really love teaching music theory. I started guitar this past year, although I can stay a page ahead of them. I do not claim to be a guitarist. And actually, this past year, I had some guys that had a whole lot of background in guitar. In fact, one of them even gigs, and those guys taught the class. I didn't do a whole lot of instruction. I just made sure everyone was staying active, but like I let these other guys do it because they were going to do it way better than me. Now this next year I won't have that, and we've kind of built some class resources and things like that now that I have access to. And then a few humanities classes, and I do actually don't mind them so long as the class sizes are decent and I don't have 30 some kids. And because you do get to work with a lot of kids who are outside the band program. I think as band directors, we're well served to get outside the band program. I know tons of kids in the hallway. Like I have students that, guy who hadn't been in humanities, he still makes a point to come by and say hello every day. When he has a class near mine or something like that, you just get to work with a lot of different people. And sometimes we kind of get in our band world and we forget the bigger picture. And especially if you're working in a small school, you need to be at least known outside of, band. I'm not somebody that socializes at work. If I'm at work, I'm working. But the students need to know who you are. The teachers need to know who you are. And because you got to build those relationships. With persons in your building and not in your building as well. The adults are our sustainers in our jobs. That's who determines whether we keep a job or not. And so building those positive relationships is really important. But yeah, I'm kind of getting off track. But no, I actually do enjoy working with kids outside the band program. And if we're not teaching the arts, who is?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're in your little rural school and you're the only band director, and the humanities classes can be a pain, but you can still teach them in a way that's enriching to the students, that doesn't overwhelm you. Because they did hire me to teach band, although I only get to do that a couple of times a day. But that's why we've built so many other things within the school.
Mm.
Yeah.
What recruitment tools or events do you use?
So we have a little bit of an advantage here with it being, my wife and I, and although, like I said, we don't team teach, and we do have a little bit of loss in translation sometimes. They know of me, but they don't really know me. They don't have a relationship with me. So I'll go over and visit the middle school a few times a year. If sometimes I have to get class coverage, which I really don't like doing that. So if I've got to cover it that way, I may do that to go over a couple times a year and meet with the kids. And but if they go to an honor band and I'm able to go, I'll go help chaperone, so I could chat with the kids that are there. Something that we do also, getting kids to transition from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, is all of our students that we would like to see, that that we want to see come up. We will mail an invitation to their home to be in the band and to come to a meeting that's about probably about 2 or 3 weeks after the mailer goes out. But we actually send, like I said, it's an invitation that's got, like, there'll be there's a letter in there that's addressed to the student to invite them to come with their families, and then there's a schedule attached and things like that, so that they can discuss, and a few other little talking points that we'll have, that kind of a frequently asked questions section. And that, with starting to do that, our retention numbers went way through the roof.
Okay.
Just that personal touch. And then, coming to high school, if you got band camp that's before school, which I think probably, not every program does, but most programs have something that starts before school. I call everybody on the phone about a week before we start. I call everybody, hey, we're excited. Just don't forget, we're freshmen, it's a reminder. The veteran members, it's just a, hey, here we go. And the kids will get excited about it, and I think we aim for sky high retention, and we're getting that right now, which is wonderful.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
What does your rehearsal preparation and or score study look like?
So score study, I think score study with band, there's two types of, I think it was Paula Kreider that talks about this. I believe it was Paula. That there are two types of score study you have to engage in. One is the musical score study, and the other is the pedagogical score study. So the musical score study is, what is this? And the pedagogical aspect of it is, how am I going to teach this? What challenges are my kids going to face as we're learning this? And so she kind of advocates that you do them separately of one another. I kind of do them at the same time. And as I'm analyzing, I kind of make notes of things. We're in the harmonic sense. You're doing the harmonic analysis not as an academic exercise, but so that where the thirds are. And is it major third or minor third? Am I lowering it or am I raising it? Is it a 7 chord? Is it, and things like that. We have Yamaha harmony directors at the middle school and at the high school, and we use them every single day. Like, that's the first thing I do when we start class, is I turn it on, and we get going, and we're playing with drones, and then we go through and make sure that the kids are marking in their music what, they kind of translate my score study into their part, as well as we're communicating that. And I think that's really important. And then, of course, it's you need to know which fingerings your clarinets are going to use, which pinky is it, which flute fingering is going to tune best here, and looking at okay, so the composer kind of loaded up around this note, around these couple of notes in there. So that's going to be really resonant just because there's a lot of people. So let's make sure that doesn't oversaturate and that's causing balance issues just because of the way it's written. So we have to, and then you have to do that with literally every composer and every piece. So for me, I'm not a big color coder in the score. That doesn't necessarily help me. But I like to use Post-it notes a lot for myself in the score. If you can get the ones, especially the ones that you can that are kind of translucent, you can write on them and you can see what you wrote, but you can see what's underneath it. That's helpful. But I also, mark up a lot with just good old pencil, and sometimes get out the highlighter also if I need to make sure that I don't miss something as we're going through. And then communicate. But like the score study's got to be for the purpose of how am I going to communicate this information to the kids, so that they're playing at their musical best. When you're sitting there with your music in front of you, think that's the whole picture. Our job is to help them see that there's a bigger picture in the room, and that you're sitting in the trumpet section, but you need to know what the clarinets are doing or what the tuba is doing. You have to know that too. And so just communicating that, and also why am I saying what I'm saying? I understand your part's marked forte, first trombone, but that's not the loudest note in this right here. So you have to kind of help them understand things like that too. But if you're not prepared before they get there, you're going to have problems. And I think score study has to be persistent throughout the process, because you're going to discover new things about your band and about the music, even if it's something you've taught before. You're going to discover new things. So you have to kind of continue that process. And so maybe initially your score study is maybe a little sparse. And then by the time you get to the end, man, it's just marked up all over the place, which is what your kids' parts hopefully look like too. I keep a box of pencils on the stand on my podium.
Yeah.
and it's usually gone by the end of the semester.
Well, and I think it's good for your students to see that you're marking your music up just like you're expecting them to do. Because I've turned my model around and be like, I'm a professional. Look at all the marks on my music.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you're modeling the behavior.
Yeah. Let's see. And you can kind of modify this to the high school. What does your band curriculum look like? Do you use any method books, any supplemental resources? I don't know of many high school band directors that use binders. I think that's more of a middle school thing. But what does that look like?
So, we do. I used to do a lot more scale playing than what I did in band class, and I do. Not saying that we don't play scales. We definitely do. I don't necessarily play scales every day in class. We focus on long tones and just generating a beautiful sound on your instrument. And also playing with correct intonation. So we play with a lot of drones in our warm up, and articulation. I think articulation is something that is very elusive to kids of all ages and adults too. Articulation is something that's really, really tricky, and we have to just really emphasize it every day and remind every day, because it can go badly very quickly if we're not being aware of articulation. So we focus a lot on fundamentals. That's really the bulk of what our warm-up looks like. We do sometimes use some different band methods. I'm a little old school. I do like the Fussell book still. The kids don't. I like it. I think we've been using it for 100 years for a reason. I've also used a few other method books. I don't like to leave just one in the folder all the time. I like to kind of rotate through them. And I also, our band class is 50 minutes on the schedule, but how that is. It's also the last period of the day, so you're going to be interrupted a bunch of times. But we want to make sure that foundational things are always there. We do a lot of chorale playing. And then, of course, our students who are auditioning for district band, we do have a scale requirement in our district band auditions. And so our students that are kind of going that extra mile for that are doing a lot of scale playing, and everybody else, if we're going to play a key piece in A flat, we're going to play a lot of concert A flat scales for a little bit. And we're going to play in concert D flat scales. We're going I'm probably not going to play concert B flat scale at any point. We've done that already. I'm not going to play a concert E flat scale. We've already done that, and yes, we're going to, I feel like we don't need to spend much time there. We need to play in some key signatures that are past what we saw in middle school. But really, especially with high school players, we need to be focusing far more on our tone quality and the characteristics, sounds of our instrument.
All right. I think that's all. My phone went to sleep. I think that's all of our questions.
Okay. So what do you guys have a jazz band at Todd County?
We do.
Okay. So that's what that's the reason I asked you on. I know you're just from my acquaintance with you and follow on Facebook and things like that. I know you are a jazz player, jazz teacher. So I think our last podcast, we started the conversation with talking about how we pick literature for concert band, and we kind of delved into how we pick literature, and then got into resources for jazz band and things like that. But it was just Tony and myself. So I just wanted to bring you in and say, or ask, what does your jazz program look like? How often do you meet? What are some struggles that you might find trying to start a jazz program in a rural county or rural school? Just let's talk jazz.
Okay. So what we have currently, we meet after school, 2-3 days a week for about an hour and 15 minutes at a time. We did have it entering the school day for a while, although I transitioned that over into a music theory course that is I think going to be more beneficial for our kids. But also it was super hit or miss as to whether kids could take the jazz band class or not, depending on what the master schedule was going on and what their academic needs were. And so I felt like transitioning off of that. We have like I said, a theory class that's open to anybody in the school. Anybody could take it. So we meet a couple days a week after school, starting in about November. Basically, as soon as we're done feeding the marching band monster, we fire a jazz band up. But also in our theory class, if you're somebody that's into jazz and you want to delve into that, we'll do that in there. But that's really what that looks like, and we try to stay active in the community and things like that. It's small schools, tricky personnel wise. It's really hit or miss. Sometimes we have a full big band. Sometimes we may only have 8 or 9. We may have half a band. It just depends on what we got.
Okay.
Yeah.
What type of performances do you guys do besides maybe spring concert and things like that?
We'll try to hit a couple of jazz festivals, like at the universities, and things like that. Any kind of ad hoc opportunities that we have, playing in some of our community events. We've got actually one of our little towns here in the county has a nice outdoor performance venue. We've but out, with outdoor, it's a little tricky. Sometimes you're at the mercy of the weather. So we do have some opportunities in and around the community to go play for different things. And also we utilize some small ensembles to do that as well, because, sometimes you can't take the jazz band down to whatever community function because it's in this little small room, and it'll be pretty uncomfortable in there if we, start letting it rip in there.
Yeah. All right. So when you program for a concert, what does that look like?
Well, I want to use the opportunity to introduce kids to kind of the masters, the classics. There's a ton of really good school arrangements of lots of Miles Davis tunes. Some are better than other arrangements, but having a good ear, that's a bigger skill, is picking the right literature. Of course, the number one thing you have to pick is appropriateness for your students. Is this too difficult? Is this too simple? Is this kind of in our wheelhouse? And then also the quality of the music as well. But there's, we want to play Miles Davis, we want to play Charlie Parker, we want to play. There's tons of great arrangements of those masters, or arrangements of standards, of jazz standards, Autumn Leaves or whatever. Lots of wonderful arrangements of Ellington that are very attainable for everybody from middle school to high school. And it doesn't have to be the hardest chart on the block. It's just got to be, well written, and your kids are going to sound good. That's our job, is to make sure our kids sound good.
Now, what do you use? Let's say you've got one of those years where you've only got like 8 kids. What are you using there? Where do you get your music from?
So when you've got a really small group, it's perfectly, get the combo charts out that are like, 3 parts. There's nothing wrong with that. I know that there's some like reduced instrumentation jazz band charts out, but you have to be really careful with those, because if you put everybody one on a part, every single one of them has to sound great. Not just good. They have to sound great. They have to be able to fill it up. And if you've got like a mix of ages, and hopefully you do, that you've got freshmen through seniors in there, that may not be the place for everybody to be, hanging out on their own on a part. That's hard. That's tough playing sometimes. And so also, or they sound simple, they sound like they're like harmonically, man, they're thick, and it's, not just one on a part, it's one on a note. And so, and it's jazz vocabulary. So we're not just talking about lower and thirds. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something way more complicated than that. And so like when it's just like 8 kids, if it's really small, like I said, we'll get the combo charts out. There's a ton of, Hal Leonard's got a ton of combo arrangements out there, that by a variety of arrangers, and give those a whirl. It's actually possible to get the real book out, and you harmonize the head in it. If reading chord symbols is very accessible for people if you take the time to learn how to do it, and just kind of harmonize that. The book, Teaching Music Through Performance in Jazz Band, there's the first volume of that, man. There are some terrific chapters that give you some great ideas on how to handle teaching ensemble, how to teaching improvisation. There's one of the chapters, and I forget who wrote it off the top of my head, it's over on my shelf, talks about instant chart writing, which is like, just take the head and the chord changes and just harmonize it the way you want to. It kind of walks you through this process of how to voice it as a jazz arranger, and have at, and don't be worried about if it's not as hard as the band down the road. That should never be why you pick anything. Is, well, those folks at that high school are playing at this grade level, so we need to be playing at that grade. That's the absolute wrong way to pick anything. You're picking for the kids. You're not picking because you want to, flex on somebody. You want to.
Yeah, that's ego there.
Right.
Well, I mean, we've all done that, but
sure. Yeah. Guilty.
But as we get older, we realize it's not about us.
Right. No. It's the last people it's about. But also, and the other thing is, when you've got the big groups or small groups, you need to make sure that you're making that you're placing an emphasis on helping kids get comfortable with improvisation. Okay. That is the crux of jazz. That is what jazz is. That's what makes it what it is.
Let's get into that. How do you do that? How do you personally do that?
Right. So, I think the biggest hurdle for anybody in improvisation is they're super intimidated. You have to put yourself on display, and you have to make yourself very available and accessible to people, in a relatively unplanned, not entirely unplanned, if you're going to sound good, moment. So one of the techniques that I really like to do is, and we do this a whole lot throughout our process, is we do these like mass improvisations. So if I've got the backing track playing, or what, I'll have the backing track, and it may be like the Aebersold major minor, or something like that, or whatever it is we're working on, blues or whatever it is, and I'll have the backing track playing very loudly in the band room, and literally everybody's improvising at the same time.
Right.
Nobody can hear anybody else.
Yeah.
And nobody's even trying to, because you're more worried about what you're playing. And it's pretty wild as it's going on. I mean, it's crazy. And people are like, what is going on in there? Right. What is going on in there?
Yeah.
But the thing is that you'll start hearing kids get totally unafraid to try things.
Mm-hmm.
And so also I want to put an emphasis on melodic soloists. I don't want you to just, helping kids organize solos in the key area that they're in, and what scale will work through that area, and you go, well, this is a 2-5-1, so they need to do this and this and this. Well, it's all in one. And then, so that's then kind of help them hear what notes are in which chords and things like that. But that's really how we process improvisation anyway. We want to be very horizontally minded. So another exercise that I've done for a long, long time is I'll draw a line on the board, and I'll go, okay, we're going to improvise 4 measures with the track, and I want you to play that line. Whatever it is I drew up there. Yeah. And so they're just thinking about how their notes flow in that line. Obviously, you got to put something that they can just stick in one key on, and improvise that line. And then we'll do something different. So it may be flowing. It may be there's a big jump in it somewhere. It may be, a broken line where you kind of see a little wiggle here, a little wiggle there, and that. A lot, and that helps kids. You're trying to get them to be used to interpreting, and this self-indictment. We teach from the page way too much, even because we're all school band directors. We're kind of mass producing players, and so the quickest way to do that is to teach them to read. My daughter is been in a Suzuki violin program for a couple of years now. She doesn't know what a quarter note is, nor does she need to know. She doesn't need to, and so just helping kids get used to processing the music that's coming out of their instrument with no guideline in front of them. So those mass improvisations, thinking about playing musical lines. I don't teach a ton of blues scale, because they start turning everything blue. Teach them how to use, if you're getting to that point, you can teach them how to use blue notes, and the blues scale will organically emerge, which is what it did anyway. And so that's, giving them, tools, and then make sure that the vibe in the room is super positive. I never will force anybody to solo.
Right.
Make anybody take a ride on their own. They have to choose to do it. And I have had bands where very few people were interested in doing that. And I've had bands where every kid took a solo on the concert. Like every kid stood up and improvised. I've had that happen too. And
10-minute songs and
we'll go, okay, so that one raises their hand every time for a solo. So let's give them like 2.
Right.
And I love the enthusiasm though. And then, so keeping it like that, but it's so we might even start with, we're going to go 2 measures down the row. You play 2 measures, you play 2 measures, you play 2 measures, something like that. And if they play 2 notes, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's just little things like that to kind of get them interested, get them feeling comfortable with sharing themselves like that. And then eventually you start, if you get some kids that are really into it and want to branch out, you can start helping them follow chord tone, follow a chord progression, but you got to carefully curate that. If you throw 4 by Miles Davis in front of them, they're going to really struggle. That stuff changes. But
James steps.
Yeah. Don't go don't go to Miles and Coltrane and Parker yet. Go with some variations of blues. Help them actually play the changes in a blues chord progression, and then maybe it's a blues chord progression that's not just one for the first 4 bars. It's 1-4-1-4, or something like that. That's helpful too. In helping them just keep it simple for them. You're riding with training wheels, and yeah, we all listen to these incredible jazz soloists, and we want to sound like that, but they didn't start there either.
Yeah. Yeah. Charlie Parker. Yeah.
No.
Booed off the first time he played.
Right.
So, have you checked out any, what teaching resources do you use, or do you use, you mentioned Real Book. I know like Standard of Excellence has a good little book out. Essential Elements has good little books out for style and things like that. What do you use anything like that?
Not particularly. I think the best resources you have are the wealth of recordings that exist by the actual real people. And if you're playing standards and you're playing, things by the classics, listen to those with the students and discuss, and then emulate what you heard. That's how they all learned it anyway. They didn't, those guys didn't learn from, reading it because they were inventing it. They learned it by hearing from other people and copying and transcribing. But also, if you'll, again, I'm going to reference the teaching music through performance in jazz, the chapter by Ronald Carter. He talks about using how to use different syllables and different words. And of course, Ron passed away not too long ago. I had a chance to hang out with him a little last summer, and we sat down for a cup of coffee, and it turned into an articulation lesson and a syncopation lesson. And I thought I knew what I was doing, and Ron showed me real quick. I didn't. Making sure that your students have a concept that it needs to be vocalized. Clark Terry wrote a book called on doodle tonguing, and that's what he's talking about in that book is do and dit, da, and things like that. And if you can teach your kids how to articulate with words like that, and it's never a b sound, it's always a duh, because duh has tongue in it. And so when they're singing, and sometimes you're just scat singing parts, and making sure that they're doing that they're using their tongue to start the using a letter like D to start the notes, so that they get that sound in there.
The Essential Elements. That's I've used that book. I like that book. That's their process. When we talk about it, and I use it just for, it's got some good warm-up articulation exercises. And what I like about it is it uses, you talked about listening to the masters, and it's not Duke Ellington, but it is the North Texas 1 O'Clock Jazz Band.
Can't go wrong there.
That plays all they play it, and then we play it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
that's cool.
Yeah, the track is with them playing the example, and then the rhythm section lets us play it. So yeah, and it's using the dit and the dot and the dut and things like that on all the different articulations. So I know, seeing on Facebook people asking all the time about where can I get articulation, or where can I get what's a good method book for jazz or whatever. I have no experience with Standard of Excellence, but I do like the Essential Elements because of that, mainly because of it's the 1 O'Clock Jazz Band that they're listening to, and the way they do the articulations.
And I'm going to check that out because I hadn't seen that resource. Jeff Coffin wrote a book called The Articulate Jazz Musician that's designed for ensemble study. Also, it's been out for a while, and that's exactly what he's doing also in there. But it's listening as you're talking about the essential elements jazz, do that with your charts too. And we were playing April in Paris, and as soon as my sax kids heard that that big bassy saxophone section come in, they immediately sounded like that. I was like, that's what you got to sound like. I was like, what does that sound like? So, and then we were listening for where they're releasing, you know, where are they releasing those notes, and how are they doing? How's that release sound? And try to copy that sound. And they did it, you know, and we went from sounding like a bunch of people that didn't really know what they were, you know, how to handle this, to something that was much more authentic. The brass was the same story. And you can't read style. You have to hear style and copy it. If you're, even with your concert band, if you're programming, you know, Granger, if you're programming somebody more contemporary, you know, whatever it is, you need to, you've got to let your students hear the style of that and emphasize that, because not all eighth notes are going to be treated equally, depending on who it is, what it is, and what's going on. Even if they look the same on the page, you gotta understand by hearing and then emulating how to emulate.
And swing is different than Latin and bossa nova and samba, and you know, they're all different. That's what I was wondering too. When you program for a concert, what does style play into that?
Well, we're gonna play of course a lot of swing, but we don't want to just play swing. And just a side note on that, that is the hardest style to help people play in, because they don't listen to anything that swings. There's nothing they listen to that swings.
Right.
You know, in their normal consumption of music, unless they're purposefully seeking out jazz. And that's another thing you have to emphasize with your students, is that they on their own, well, playlists now set aside time every day to listen. And I was do the old guy thing. I was like, back in my day, we didn't have the YouTube, and we couldn't have you know, done the things. So you guys can just get lost in it, you know, and it's incredible. And you need to try to actually use it for something that will better you, and not just whatever silly internet video is circulating at the time. Yeah, that one. I haven't watched it, and I don't plan to. But but you know, whatever is you know, use that as their own educational resource too.
What are some other resources you use in your class?
I mean, I guess I'm teaching a lot how I learned. You know, I had a wonderful undergraduate saxophone instructor at Murray State. There was no jazz at all in the curriculum at Murray State, except for the ensembles at that time. They have some things now, but at the time there was nothing. And so my passion for jazz was me and a CD player and headphones in the practice rooms at night, and figuring it out myself. And so we do that a lot too. I play and emulate, and they'll play back to me. That gets a little old after a while too. You know, training their ears, especially. And if you're somebody out there that's, I'd be like, oh, I don't really play jazz, or I'm an oboe player, I don't know how to do all this. Do it. There's no such thing as a jazz instrument. They're all, it's an instrument. I mean, and people think, like, go find some recordings of Yusuf Lateef, and he's playing oboe, and you know, and or whatever. He brought in, you know, these, you know, Asian double reed instruments, and he's recording all those. Anything works. Getting an instrument that maybe you're not comfortable with, and improvising with your students on, because you're going to have to calm yourself down. You're going to have to, you know, play within yourself to help facilitate them, and then you're learning along with them, and that's way more welcoming environment. So you know, in terms of resources, that's what that's what I use a lot, is just going back to the recordings. And I'm gonna check out that Essential Elements method book. And the nice thing is like, you can build your own personal library of recordings. You can use the internet to gain access to them. And it's, so easy. But also going back on the programming, we're going to make sure we program some Latin charts in there. We're going to good quality Latin. And funk is a little bit tricky because the deep end of the pool is not far off. When you get into funk and things like that, it's especially if you don't have a rhythm section that could really lay it down for you. But and sometimes I'm not being disparaging toward any arrangers or anybody. Sometimes the easier rock and charts and things like that get a little hokey. Although there's some really good ones out there too. But making sure that you are programming diversely, because it is by its nature, it's a diverse music.
Right.
And if all you're playing is rock charts, your kids aren't learning jazz.
Then it's a pet band.
And that's the next thing I was going to say is, maybe your jazz band does cover the pet band games. That's fine. They need to have another book too, though. They need to have a jazz book too, and play. I mean, I actually did that for taught a little school in the jazz band classes who played the pet band games. Yeah, because the gym was so small. Although I did start taking the full band eventually, people thought I was doing something just absolutely lunatic, and then they actually really liked it. But we played jazz at the basketball games.
Yeah,
people like it. People like it, it's who was it? I saw this the other day on Instagram. I forget who it was. It was a video. So I talked about this, about how the fashion industry doesn't figure out what the people want to buy. They tell them what they want to buy.
Exactly. Right.
And so in music, should we be only giving people what they want to listen to, or should we be showing them the other amazing things they wouldn't find on their own?
Yeah.
And
that's the thought, man.
And innovate. Don't just recycle, but innovate.
Right.
And people will enjoy it, and play some things people know. There's some great arrangements of pop tunes out there. That's what the jazz standards, guess what? Those were pop tunes in their day.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those were popular tunes in their day, and they just adapted them because people like them. So, get that, when a couple of years ago, there's a great arrangement out there. We don't talk about Bruno. It's a great Latin chart. It's terrific. Yeah. It's terrific. It's a really fun Latin chart, and it's really well written, and it's a great tune to solo on. And so we played that, and everyone loved it. There's, like I said, jazz has always been a music that absorbs and influences the music around it. And so don't be afraid to do things like that. Just don't do only that. Just do some other things as well. And people just love music. I mean, the music, we get fed music industry stuff all the time, and the music industry has always underestimated people's desire to, or ability to comprehend high level music. I just went to Nashville, Tennessee, Sunday night to hear Jacob Collier in the sold out Grand Ole Opry. Don't tell me people don't want to hear great music and aren't willing to go. That's a 4,300 seat venue,
right?
Don't tell me people don't want great music. That's complex and interesting. And I get that musicians are who are going to those concerts. When he does his little mass choir with the audience, you can tell that immediately. But again, there's a lot of people who are in there that were just like there. They were just there to hear it, and and the crowd was into it the whole time. So I won't believe that people don't want interesting music.
Exactly. Right. So let's see, Tony, do you have any questions? You go ahead and ask, and I may think of another one here.
I don't have any off the top of my head. Going back to closer to the beginning of the interview, how it takes 3 or 4 years for it to become your own program. I always want to emphasize that with my student teachers and anybody going into the profession. Like, you are not the savior to this program. Like, you have to go in, you have to kind of play it by their game. And it's crazy how you can tell when that switch is flipped and all of a sudden, okay, things are different now. It's that, I've taught in 3 programs, and I could always tell exactly when that switch turned and it went from I'm the new guy to this is my program. So
Yeah,
new band directors just, keep that in mind. You can't come in and change everything day one. And
yeah, you got and you have to have some standards. You have to have some non-negotiables.
yeah,
We don't tolerate bad attendance. If you're not going to come to stuff, then why are you here? Because there's not much sense in signing up for it if you're not going to attend.
yeah,
And we do attach a grade to that. We're allowed to do that. I know not every district lets people do attach grades to the performances, but and it's not. And even then, it's like not so much about the grade. It's just about, are you actually doing the thing that you're here to do? And
yeah,
if you're not, then we need to move on. But you got to have some, like I said, some standards and some non-negotiables in the way we conduct ourselves in the band room. And you got to think of 3 or 4 things that you just there's a hard line on this. And that's not saying that we don't work with kids that maybe slip up, and make a mistake, because you're going to have to work with them, or else why are you a teacher? But
yeah,
just evolving. I know that some of the things that were present when I took over here at Todd are not present now, mostly. There's also some things as a new teacher, you have to learn to differentiate between what's a kid problem and what's an actual problem.
Mhm.
Just the little infuriating behaviors that kids do sometimes versus what's a real problem. Is it worth flipping out because they left the storage room a mess? It's not. They're going to leave the storage room a mess sometimes. So what do? We go back in there and we straighten up real quick and fix it. Some of the things. So one of the things that I always do every year is, this is just a little thing, when we come back, when we're at band camp, or when we are finishing up at a football game, or when we're finishing up at a band contest, I take the trash out. I bag the trash. I pull the trash bag out. I throw it on the cart, and I'm going to roll it out to the dumpster. And I make sure everybody sees me doing that. And eventually, it gets where I actually don't take the trash out anymore, because somebody else is like, "Oh, let me."
Yeah.
Like, I'm not so big I can't take out the trash in my own band room. And
Right.
I'm not going to tell you to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm telling you to keep things clean, so I'm helping keep things clean too. And that's where I don't say it. I just let them see me do it. But like, what's like, again, what's a kid thing? Are they going to talk? Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not a real problem until it's causing, issues. Are they going to sneak their cell phone out in class? Yeah. So how do you handle that? How are you teaching not kid behaviors, teaching them adult behaviors, and
Mhm.
then actually handling when there's a real problem, and handling it in a way that that doesn't cause them to lose their dignity, that doesn't make them angry. They may not like the fact that you're telling them they need to do something, but you have to do it in a way that's not off-putting to
Right.
them.
Right.
I don't want to be yelled at, so I'm not going to yell at anybody.
Right.
It's funny. I
Yeah.
had a parent that's been around bands and other places, and she's like, "We haven't heard you yell." Not really. And I was
Mhm.
like, I don't want somebody yelling at me. Why am I going to yell at them? Golden rule. Let's do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And it took me years to realize that. I was like,
Oh
it
yeah, me
doesn't
too.
solve anything. It just makes things worse, and it makes things worse on you as
Oh
well.
sure. Yeah, yeah. It's not
You
good
know?
for your mental and physical
Right.
health to get that
So
angry
like,
either.
yeah, I mean, kids are going to do stupid things because they're kids. They don't know better yet, and we use those as,
Hmm?
here's your choices. This was the choice you made. Now here's the consequence for it.
Right. Or here's how we're going to do better.
Yeah.
Here's so is that it's and you have to work with them, because you're teaching kids, and there's got to be a
Right.
line too.
Oh yeah.
where we got to take it up a notch. It's like, well, we're gonna have to take this to. I've already talked to you. I've already talked to your parents. So we're gonna take this to the office now.
Yeah.
And it's pretty rare that I mean, in any class that I ever have to do that anymore, because over the years I've learned how to not do that, how to handle it in my room, my way, where I'm actually strengthening a relationship with the student, as opposed to it's adversarial. Now we're working together and we have a good relationship, even if we don't always agree. And sometimes we're way on each other's nerves, but we have a good, positive working relationship because they need that. They desperately need that. Positive relationships with adults and also working relationships. We're not just talking about familial relationships, but a working relationship like what you have with the teacher. And that needs to be positive because you want them to see that when they go out there, that's possible, and what that looks like so that they can seek that positive working relationship out as an adult.
All right. Well, Mike, I know we've taken up way too much of your time. We appreciate you so much for coming on and talking to us from a fellow rural band director to another rural band director. We're both in Kentucky. I'll see you, I know, throughout the year at different meetings and things like that. So we appreciate you coming out and talking with us. And I picked up a few things off your jazz conversations and things like that. So plan on using some of those things in the room.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad to know. Well, thank you guys for having me so much.
Well, you're very welcome. Enjoy your summer and safe travels.
All right. Same to you guys. Take care.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, feel free to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Rural Band Director.
And if you have topics that you'd like for us to cover, contact us through email at theruralbanddirector@gmail.com.